As more cryptocurrency platforms become available to the general public, the relationship between fiat currency and cryptocurrency continues to change. Traditional payment systems are slowly becoming increasingly obsolete, and blockchain-based networks are taking over. However, the blockchain takeover may be quieter than most people know. Some services have integrated blockchain into their products so seamlessly that users may not even know that they are using blockchain technology. Recently, Finance Magnates spoke with Tempo director Anthony Barker about how Tempo has integrated blockchain into its services and about the shifting relationship between fiat and cryptocurrency. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how have you gotten to this place in your professional journey? How did you get involved with Tempo?
Yeah, so sure. I'm originally Canadian, and I met my co-founder Jeff in business school in Arizona at Thunderbird, which is a well-known international business school in the U.S. Um, and I'd been working for right out of school. I worked for IBM as like a programmer, software consultant, and then I kind of moved into the financial services and IT. That's sort of my specialty. So I did that for over a decade, mostly working for Canadian banks like Bank of Montreal, BMO. And then I spent a lot of time, they had a subsidiary in Chicago named Harris Bank. I spent time there, and I helped them set up a subsidiary in China that they set up about 8 years ago. And then I started moving more focus on trading and specifically FX. And then I switched to doing stock market trading. And when I was doing stock market trading, they had really strict rules for employees. Like we couldn't do stock trades. You had to like announce it beforehand because you can see the order flow, the orders from clients. So I wasn't really able to do any trading on my own. And so and I'd heard about Bitcoin a while back, and I'd bought some like 2010, 2011, but it wasn't really interesting for me back then until they started this sort of all the trading platforms like Poloniex or a bunch. And that's really why I started using it. I was interested in the trading aspect. And again, because we couldn't do it at the bank, it was all kind of bombed. And then I kind of started to understand the use for international payments. So then Jeff and I started Temp about 2014. We kind of rebooted it and found investors, and we've been talking about doing something because we were roommates in college. We've been thinking about doing something for a while together. So yeah, we went out and found an investment round, and then sort of started up. I didn't start full time for a little while. I stayed with kind of working with the bank, managing electronic trading at National Bank, because the salary was really high. And then I joined about 2 years ago full time. And at the time I was looking, because I quite liked Ripple, but I didn't like. I'd been sort of playing with Ripple, and I'd been playing with Bitcoin, and Ethereum wasn't even out yet. Although I was from Toronto, I knew Vitalik and a few of the other people in the Ethereum community. Anyway, we decided on Stellar for a bunch of reasons. One being that it was sort of focused on the space that Tempo was, which was remittance company. Jeff had been working for one of the biggest remittance companies called RIA. He'd been running their European operations. And so that's the sort of space he'd been working in. So we did this. The original focus was remittance and international payments. And since sort of switched to, I would say, small value payments, like, it's the stuff that the banks don't handle well. Banks are right now about 55% of international foreign exchange, and licensed non-bank companies like Western Union or, although they're semi-bank, or RIA, is 33% of global FX. So it's not, these non-bank FX companies are not small. They're actually pretty big portion of the global FX. And unlike the banks, we typically have to have our money sitting in the other country when we want to do a payment. So when you go to someone like a Western Union or even not so much TransferWise, but probably Asimo, they'll have some money sitting in the other country, and then they do a payout from their account in that country. To make it faster. So you have this problem of moving money using the SWIFT settlement system, and it's really expensive, cumbersome, and slow. And so that's sort of why we naturally migrated to blockchain. It was there's this thing the banks don't do well, which is small, transfer payments under about $10,000. They don't do it well because it's really expensive. The correspondent banks, it's like a bit of a nightmare. Your money gets locked up and you have no real idea where it is or why it's been blocked. And Stellar was sort of a natural fit for us. So I reached out to Jed McCaleb, and because he was focused on remittance. And when we originally launched on Stellar, it was over 2 years ago. There was really no partners that we no licensed partners. There were people using it, but there weren't any licensed company. And Tempo as it's got a Bank of France license, it has to use basically you have to partner with other licensed companies. We can't use, there was one called Ripple Fox out of Shanghai, and they're doing some volume, but they're non-licensed. And when we get audited by the government, if we were sending a whole bunch of money through them, we might get our hands slapped. So that's why we can only really connect to licensed other companies. So Stellar ecosystems really evolved, I would say, in the last year and a half. So we're sending quite a bit of money to the Philippines using CoinsPH, Flutterwave for Nigeria. They also have Ghana and Kenya. And our clients typically are traditional remittance people. They walk in with cash and they send their money. And so they don't even know in a lot of cases that there's blockchain behind it. So it's sort of seamless for the users.
Right. Yeah. So there's no technical know-how that these people have to have in order to use the service.
No. They go in. A lot of them might not even have. I would say all of them probably have a cell phone, but they might not even have a smartphone. So they'd come in and use our service, and we do. Then we launched about a year ago an online service, and we got a mobile app. But again, the client doesn't really know. It's the look and feel is a lot closer to like an Asimo or a World Remit or much closer to that than if you're using Coinbase or something else, because you don't have to know about private public keys. You don't have to know about any of the sort of losing your key or any of these things that drive people crazy. Sending to Bitcoin Cash address instead of a Bitcoin address and losing your money. So all these things that are kind of hard for users are kind of hidden in our service.
Right. Yeah. So why Stellar exactly? What about the technology of the Stellar network attracted you?
So again, there's about 3 or 4 main reasons. The first one was that it was not for profit and open source. Sort of, I'd been involved in Linux way back, and I liked sort of the open source philosophy. And Ripple, while a lot of the code base eventually became open source, it was was not. It's a for-profit company, and the coins are basically owned mostly by a couple of individuals in the corporation. So just my gut reaction is it's not the best for community building. Much closer to like a Visa, MasterCard. And Ethereum and Bitcoin. So the 2 main reasons one was the settlement times. Well, not a huge deal for international remittance. if you try and do a cash out solution, like what I always compare to is not many people use Bitcoin ATMs. Typically, they use them to buy, but there is one in downtown Toronto at the Deloitte building. Right. Deloitte's got like a cash in, cash out Bitcoin machine, and they were one of the first ones to launch that. And if you cash out, you have to basically go away for 30 minutes, and they send you an SMS text and say, okay, your transaction's got your 3 confirmations or 4 confirmations, and you can come pick up your money. And I was like, I love Bitcoin, but this cash out system really sucks. Who's going to wait at a Bitcoin ATM for 30 minutes? We're all used to 5 seconds. So the 5 second block time, 3 to 5 second block time in Stellar really attracted me. The idea that you can create really easily these stable, you can create different assets on it. So about a year and a half ago, we created a stable coin on Stellar, which is called, Tether really hadn't launched one yet, but we called it Euro T because of tempo or token. So it's a Euro. Tempo, we take it 1-to-1. So that gets rid of a lot of the volatility that's can be an issue with some of the cryptocurrencies. And then what we're trying to do now is we were initially mostly sending to Nigeria and Philippines and Brazil and a few other countries. And the issue with that is that we end up with a net. We're always then having to go and buy crypto because we don't have a balance in and out. So that's sort of our next goal, sort of balance the in and out. We're partnering with a couple big players. For example, one that starts with an I, but I can't really say it yet. And then we've got, we're basically trying to build the inbound order flow into Europe. So the other thing I'm super excited about is this concept of real-time settlement in different countries. So the payment systems are you based in the U.S. or where are you based?
I'm originally from Detroit, but I live in Helsinki these days.
Oh, Helsinki. Okay, cool. I lived in Vasa, which is up the coast, for 2 years.
No way! Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, we'll have to talk about this after the interview, but yeah.
I think Finland's got, it's almost, well, anyway, with SEPA, it's becoming, by November, January of next year, it'll be real-time SEPA. It'll be SEPA instant. So you should be able to do a SEPA wire within 5 seconds anywhere in the Eurozone and get your money.
Wow.
And that's pretty cool. And then in Nigeria and a bunch of other countries like Chile and Ghana and Kenya, they're already got real-time settlement. So it's like if we send money to Nigeria, it hits the bank account in 10 seconds. So this concept is this sort of real-time settlement inside the country, and then so it's basically 3 steps. We'll receive the money in real time, and then there'll be real-time payment on the Stellar blockchain, which is another 5 seconds, and then payout in like Nigeria would be another 10 or 15 seconds. So the goal would be to get like an international payment where we don't have to have the money in the other country within 60 seconds. Which for me is really revolutionary. I don't think that we haven't ever seen this. The only people who get close to this are what Visa and MasterCard offer, and they typically take, they're taking 2.5% or 3 or 4% of the order. And they're a pull-only system where you can pull money using Visa, MasterCard. It's really hard to send. Although in Russia they allow sending, and they started a company called HomeSend, which is sort of built for that. But very, very little of their traffic using they call it a payment rail is send. It's like a pull system.
Right.
Yeah. So that's sort of the goal would be in about these 40 countries that'll have real-time payments by next year. We'll try and have partners in all of them and then kind of connect it to Stellar so that you've got this sort of real-time global payment system where
So,
people can net, where you can basically net out. Because you still have to buy lumens if you're all sending, you still have to get your money. You still have to buy the lumens and send them, which still could take a day. So you somehow need a way of getting sort of this neutral balance by the end of the day.
right. So kind of where exactly is Tempo like in its journey to like full implementation of this vision of payments in under 60 seconds?
We are. I'll be completely honest. It's like crypto. It's the whole crypto space really feels like the internet circa 1998 or 1999, where it took a while for things like Facebook or Google even to really take over. So I'm super excited. I think that more partners really help, and people like IBM will help make the whole thing a lot more mature.
Mm-hmm.
And then I expect like the banks, because they're used to making $30 on a Swift wire.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're probably gonna not initially be on board. So I think the banks will take a long time to get on board.
Right. And a couple minutes ago, you mentioned that like although you had been kind of attracted to Ripple in the past, that they weren't a very good network for community building. And I'm just curious, like, what you mean by community building and why that's important to Tempo.
Again, if I look at open systems versus sort of open companies, open technologies, like the internet, versus we had this thing I'm based in Paris, so there's this thing called Minitel, which is it was sort of somewhat proprietary, kind of owned by one company, and I have a strong belief that open systems in the long run win.
Okay. So community in a technological sense.
Yes.
Okay.
For example, they have this thing called it's kind of cool, Stellar Development Challenge, and I know that Ethereum's got something like that as well, but they basically give a lot of lumens away to developers who are making projects, open source projects or whatever. I mean, to be honest, Ethereum is probably the best right now. It's even much better than Stellar at development, developer community. And for me, but they're trying to build like Ethereum. The whole Ethereum ecosystem is really focused on different. It's almost a different tool, like so what I always compare it to is like, it's like you're trying to put in a screw and it's more like a hammer. Yeah. So it's not that Ethereum worse or anything. It's just a different type of tool for a different type of problem.
Right.
And so, for example, I worked with Jed and his developers, and we added compliance, because compliance is a huge part of payments. So that's integrated into Stellar as a layer, like a standard layer 2 protocol. So we know how to send their first name, last name, and date of birth across. So that in France, that's a really huge thing. We need to be able to, because of the terrorist stuff, we need to be able to check people, make sure that they're not on some terrorist blacklists.
Right.
So that's built into like the standard protocol. Again, they added that really quickly as a standard thing, simply because they were focused on this sort of global remittance use case.
Right.
The other thing that they've done that I think is fairly cool is they're attracting, I would say, like a lot of good development. It took them a while. It took a while to get going, but they're attracting some good development talent. And compared to a year ago, it's moved like hugely ahead.
Right. So Tempo is offering, like, as you mentioned earlier, the Bitcoin ATM, like the option to cash out of cryptocurrencies. Is that correct?
So we're fully integrated into Stellar, and that means because Stellar is in the end a cryptocurrency, and as long as someone provides they do their KYC properly, we'll take whatever crypto that's available on Stellar, and connect it to Stellar. So you can move out of Bitcoin or Ethereum and Cash App for Tempo as well.
And how would that work exactly? Like you just go to Tempo payment service provider and say like, hey, I have some Bitcoin and I want it into cash, or?
So right now, I'll talk about what it is right now, and then we'll talk about 6 months,
Okay.
8 months from now.
Yes.
So right now, you need to be a little bit technical. So what does that mean? It means you probably easiest way would be you convert the easiest way would be you just convert your other cryptocurrency, whether it be one of the bazillion cryptos, and you put it into lumens, and then just pay for and then you send the money. You log into our system, you send money somewhere, and you pay for the wire payment using the crypto, using lumens. That's the way it works right now. In the future, there's about 3 or 4 distributed exchanges that'll be launching that are like Stellar X, which is being written by kind of Lightyear, which is Stellar's for-profit arm. Stellar X I got a demo of it. It's this really cool trade. It's basically a trading front end. And then what they've done is we're extending. You remember I mentioned that compliance protocol? We're going to make it. I've been working with them to make it as integrated, so that you can use Stellar X and then cash in using Tempo and cash out using Tempo or another provider. So the Stellar X thing is basically a completely distributed software where they're not custodying your funds and they're not doing KYC. It's just a software platform that's connected into Stellar that you can use for trading.
Okay, I see.
And then if you want to cash in, you can use Tempo or any other company there's about 18 to 20 companies integrate, like payments companies like Tempo that we've signed deals with. Again, in most countries of the world, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Korea. I mean, we've signed partnerships all over the world. And eventually, I think you'll be able to cash in any of these countries and cash out.
Okay, I see. And there's also
distributed exchange, because built into Stellar is the distributed exchange, so you don't need to. I never really touched on that either. Like we originally had signed up with there weren't many regulated exchanges, and so there's like Bitstamp in Europe. Like 2 years ago, there's only Bitstamp, and they came out with the Bit license in New York, and so it was again, Tempo as a regulated entity has to deal with other regulated companies, and so there wasn't really much available in terms of regulated companies to deal with. Like, I don't even think Kraken has their license yet in Europe. So that's why the distributed exchange for us was kind of super interesting, that we didn't have to rely on this other third-party company that we don't really know. We don't really know if we don't know if they're properly being custodian. We don't know if they're doing money laundering behind the scenes. We don't really know if it's run by a terrorist organization. So so that's why the distributed exchange is pretty cool. That's built into Stellar, and I know Ripple has one as well, and there's a couple built into Ethereum as well.
Okay, and there's also this the Tempo debit card that can be used, I think, with cryptocurrency. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Tempo, what we're doing is we're kind of morphing the company from a traditional remittance company into kind of more of I think in a year or two it'll look more like Coinbase.
Okay.
Where, we'll have this debit card. So there's a bunch of debit cards that are available right now, but no one's fully connected into Stellar. So the idea being that with Stellar, you could have we're talking to 2 or 3 asset issuers that are regulated, one that'll be issuing real estate on Stellar in Holland. So it'll be like you could own part of an apartment building.
Okay.
And you could then cash that out. It'll be like an apartment. It's a REIT, kind of like a REIT in the US, sort of like a real estate fund. Mm-hmm. And you could then cash out, €1 or €2 of your real estate fund token for a coffee.
Huh, okay. Using the debit card.
Using the debit card, yeah.
Okay.
And because Stellar offers this sort of 3 to 5 second settlement time, we can convert in real time that asset that's on Stellar and sell it and convert it into euros, and you can pay for your cup of coffee.
All right. So from your perspective now as this company who's moving further and further into the crypto space, how do you see the relationship between cryptocurrencies and fiat currencies shifting within the next, let's say, 2 to 5 years?
2 to 5 years. I mean, I don't think crypto is going to replace cash. It's just people are used, like fiat, people are used to it. Mm-hmm. But I think it'll play an important role in, like, Bitcoin for me is sort of like an e-gold. So that one won't go away. It'll be sort of this thing where if, you live in a country that's got inflation, or you live in a country that people want to take your money, like in Venezuela. Mm-hmm. The government's going to steal your money. It's sort of a Swiss bank account for every person. That's what Bitcoin is for me.
Right.
And I don't think that'll go away. And certain governments are going to fight against it. Mm-hmm. Then you've got other cryptocurrencies like Ethereum, which is trying to rebuild everything into these smart contract driven world. I think 2-3 years they'll still be building it out. Mm-hmm. I think the tokenization will continue for sure. Because that's sort of proven itself, but I don't know about smart contracts for everything. And things like Stellar or Ripple being focused more on banks and Stellar more on money services companies. I think they're going to get a lot of traction simply because, again, they've got this one specific use case, and they're super focused on like one application. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then you've got other blockchains like IBM's Fabric or R3 mm-hmm. that'll be used quietly behind the scenes, and no one really know that they exist.
Yes, except for nerds like you and me.
Yeah.
So, what else is on the roadmap for Tempo over the next couple of years? Are there plans on the horizon to kind of like, beyond what you've mentioned, increase Tempo's operations within the crypto space, or what's the plan?
So, I mean, we got a couple. I got some projects that are super exciting. One is for basically. So again, Tempo's based in Paris. It's a huge tourism business. Mm-hmm. So one of our projects is a way of paying, not only with a debit card, but paying directly with Stellar. Mm-hmm. At retailers. So we've partnered with a company in France that does point of sale systems, and we're thinking of rolling that out to like 20,000 locations. That's one cool thing. Mm-hmm. But that's again focused on. It's still the small value international payments, but it's focused on tourism. Mm-hmm. Then we've also got projects where we're thinking of building this thing called a dark pool again, I worked in the stock market, and dark pools are about 8 to 12% of stock market trading in the United States, and that helps people who've got, like, you've got a coin that's super liquid and you want to sell it, but you don't want to move the market too much. So that's another small project that we're working on.
Okay. Anthony,
And the last thing is, because France has become sort of crypto friendly in the past 2 years, we're probably going to get we're already a licensed company here. We've got the same license that like Bitstamp had in Luxembourg. So we're going to move with the government and try and apply to get a full like trading license if and when they release what's required to get that.
Okay. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for your time.